everyone. I'm Mike Flanagan, coming to you from Spotify Studios in Los Angeles, and welcome to SpectreVision Radio's production of Director's Commentary. On each episode of this show, myself and my guest filmmakers will watch one of their movies together and offer you, the listeners, a chance to watch along with us as we talk about the film, what went into making it, and anything else that may come up along the way. So make sure you've got the movie queued up, your snacks are at the ready, and we'll let you know when it's time to hit play so we can all watch together. My guest today is relatively early in his filmmaking career, but has already made a film that I include in my list of all-time favorite movies. A graduate of the University School of Milwaukee, who then went on to Yale to major in art and film, my guest today co-wrote and directed a short film called Love for the Dead before making his directorial debut on tonight's film, The Brilliant Pig, starring Nicolas Cage. Most recently, he directed this summer's smash hit, A Quiet Place, Day One. Please welcome to the show, Michael Sarnoski. Hello, my friend.
Hello. Thank you very much. That was a beautiful introduction.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on. This is the second time we've gotten to sit down and chat. I've been looking forward to this a lot since we started this podcast.
I still really appreciate you. You took me out to lunch after Pig came out, and you were one of the first kind of real directors who took me seriously and shared your love for Pig, and it really meant a lot to me.
It was, I remember vividly the first time I've seen Pig, and I've seen it easily a dozen times since then. And I remember kind of sitting there through the entirety of the closing credits, tears on my face, feeling like I had to meet you, had to reach out to you and just see what you were up to, because what an incredible debut.
Thank you.
And we get to watch the movie today together with everybody at home, which is a wonderful thing.
I can't wait. I have not watched this movie in like 3 years now, so this will be.
Well, and you have a very kind of intense and huge movie in between today and the last time you've watched this, which always makes things interesting when you kind of revisit something in the wake of something that large. And congratulations on A Quiet Place.
Thank you very much. I'm most excited to see how my VFX stack up against ILM's work on Quiet Place. I feel like they might not be quite as good.
I wanted to kind of start by letting you know how the show works, in case you haven't heard it. We break everything into 3 acts, which for us filmmakers is very comfortable. Act 1 is really about your origin story and kind of where you came from, how you became the filmmaker that you are. Act 2 will be the movie that we'll watch together, and then Act 3, we're kind of taking a piss. It's really fun. But I'd love to kind of kick things off with your origin story. You know, when did you first fall in love with movies?
I think, so I grew up in Wisconsin, and I did not come from a family that was very into movies, into the arts. It felt like film was really far away from me. Like I loved movies, I loved watching movies, but the idea of like being a director or being in Hollywood seemed just like not a career path, like not even like a hard career path, just not an option. It seemed like something that I don't know what kind of people do that sort of thing. So I think a lot of my origin was kind of getting to the point where like I felt like that was something I could seriously consider and seriously pursue. And it took me a really long time. I sort of made short films as a hobby starting in like maybe 7th grade, and I would just go in the backyard with sticks and friends and just mess around. And
what did you shoot on?
I had a Hi8 camera.
Nice.
I remember making claymation stop motions where I would just have to press the button on and off again really fast every time because there was no single frame. And it was just like a fun thing I enjoyed. I didn't know a lot of people that were into it. It was just something I liked to play with. Then I went off to college and I met some other people who were into that. And we made a short zombie movie in college, but still it was like, that was kind of the closest thing to like a real set in the sense that it wasn't just me and a handycam. It was me and like 2 other people in a handycam. And that was like, this is sort of its own thing and it's fun. And I could see myself doing this. But it took like even some years after that for me to be like, okay, I'm pursuing a career in Hollywood. And then I just didn't even know what that meant. I moved out to Riverside, California, because I knew someone from high school who had a Red camera, and he wanted to shoot like YouTube shorts, and I was like, I'll come help you shoot those. And I kind of hopped around from working with different people and helping them with their ideas. And then Pig was really the first time that I was like, I'm going to really do something that I personally and specifically really care about and I want to make. And yeah, I was just kind of lucky enough to get to do it. I had edited and produced a short documentary with one of the producers from Pig, and that was kind of it was through that I got a manager in LA, and that was kind of the beginning of actually being like taken seriously in the industry enough that I could like send a script out, and that script was Pig. So I just kind of stumbled my way through things, didn't really know what to do, didn't do film school, and just tried to figure out what I wanted to make and who I wanted to make it with. Screwed that up a lot of times, and then finally made something that felt right.
Now, you talked about this documentary that got you, the documentary short that got you your manager. Can you talk about that experience? Like, how did that film come to be?
Yeah, that was so I was working with Vanessa Block, who was one of the producers on Pig, and we went to college together. And she wanted to do a documentary about sexual violence in the Congo, and she went off to the Congo, shot like 250 hours of footage there, and I edited that together into like a 30-minute short. And that was just sort of a crazy process of, finding some people who were willing to invest a little bit of money in this idea, and then, learning how to edit something like that together was the longest thing I'd ever cut before. And then the crazy thing was that it got shortlisted for the Oscars, and then that was sort of the moment where some people in the industry were like, oh, I guess they made a real movie. And then that was kind of what opened some doors up. But it was sort of just like a labor of love that we were just trying to scrounge together and make happen. But it was very ambitious and challenging. But we pulled it off.
When you say it got you a manager, I think a lot of the people who listen to shows like this are in a position where they want to figure out how to get their thing out there, get their first rep. How did you get this film in front of people, and how did it lead to that representation?
So we had some producers who were, I think it was an interesting short film. It was about one of the first major trials for, it was like a large rape tribunal based in Congo when there was there were a bunch of soldiers that basically were Congolese soldiers that kind of fell back into a town and just sort of raped and pillaged and did all these terrible things. And it was the first time that the government there kind of took it upon themselves to like put all these people on trial. And I think it was it 42 or 32 people were on trial. And so it was kind of this like newsworthy, important moment. And so I think that helped sort of get eyes on the documentary of like, hey, we've captured this very specific moment in time and sort of told a story about it. And I think it was just sending it around to the handful of producers that anyone had any relationship with, and then that sort of snowball effect of them sending it to other people. And it was one of those. We had a relationship with this manager who I still work with today, Michael Diamond, who I really adore. We knew him through like a friend from before, and he kind of did the old hip pocketing thing where it's like, hey, like I'm supportive of you guys, and I think it's cool that you're doing cool work, and like let's see where things go. And then once the documentary got noticed, it was kind of like, okay, now we can like really start working together. And so we were just kind of really lucky to like have a friend of a friend know a manager who would take us seriously. Because it's really hard to kind of get that first connection. And I didn't really know that many other people in Hollywood, but I guess I knew like just enough to kind of be taken a little bit seriously.
That first connection is incredibly difficult to find.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that a lot of people find it by coming to LA and just kind of working with people they like on projects that may or may not go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you hope you kind of forge that.
That was what it was for me. I mean, when I first came out to Riverside, I didn't really, that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours east of LA. And I didn't really make that many industry connections there. And that was part of why I decided to bite the bullet and move into LA. And then once I got there, then you do just, I'm not the most social person, so it's hard for me, but like, you do just gradually start crossing paths with more people, and that's kind of useful. And it's a lot of BS. Are we allowed to swear? What's
Oh,
the
big
swearing?
time. We can fucking swear all day
It's
long.
a lot of
It's
fucking
great.
bullshit most of the time, but
Yeah.
like I think you want to just find people that you sort of respond to on an emotional level and that you can trust, and you know, you don't want to be like schmoozy and gross about it, but you want to kind of put yourself out there even if it feels uncomfortable, and just, you know, make yourself be known in some way, let people know what you're working on, and then hopefully if something kind of hits at the right moment, and someone sees a possibility there, you might be able to work with them. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's not like a great, people always ask me, how can I get representation? And I just sort of very slowly stumbled into it.
Yeah.
And
There's no great answer to that
Yeah,
question
there
other
isn't
than make
really.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking, so when you were making those films in the backyard, you know, when you were making your high 8 films, what were the movies that made you want to make movies? Like, what were some of the things that spoke to you just as a viewer?
Yeah, I mean, one of my really specific memories was, I remember when I was in 8th grade, I saw Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and that was like a formative movie for me, because I think that was one of the first times where I started to understand what a director did and like what it meant to have a particular director on a project, because I had a really specific relationship with Spider-Man. I loved Spider-Man. And then I saw it filtered through someone else's really distinctive lens. And that was like, oh, that's what a director's doing. They're taking something that could be done another way and doing it the way that's right for them. And I remember like just pouring through all the behind the scenes on that and being fascinated by like, oh, this is how you kind of craft a world that is your own and like carries your vision and carries your tone. I mean, I don't think I like fully understood some of that at the time, but I remember that being a moment that kind of blew my mind a little bit. That was a big one for me. I mean, I kind of grew up on a lot of like 90s rom-coms because my mom and sister chose most of the movies. So like most of my early movies that I watched were like 10 Things I Hate About You and stuff like that, which is kind of an amazing movie. I love 10 Things I Hate About You. But I think sort of like digging into movies that I cared about was that fun thing of like, okay, I was raised on rom-coms, and then you make a friend in high school who takes you into his dad's office and you watch like Harold and Maude on a VHS tape in the corner, and it's like, oh, whoa, like movies like this exist? Like I remember that was a big one where it was like, that's nothing like anything I've seen before. So yeah, let's say Spider-Man and Harold and Maude were
Spider-Man and Harold and Maude.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's, first of all, it's a phenomenal mashup pitch.
Yeah.
Right there.
I dig it. Yeah. Aunt May and yeah.
No, please continue because we can animate this. So you're out in LA, you have your manager, and you decide you're going to go out and try to get a project made.
Yeah.
And you kind of go on this very interesting journey because not a lot of people coming off of a short and just kind of getting represented are going to put together what you put together with who you put together.
Yeah, I was
like, that's
very
kind of
lucky.
amazing. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't as easy as that. The first thing when my manager was like, "Hey, like, if you have a script, I'll send it around." I didn't have that feature script. Like a lot of people say, like, "Oh, you should have 6 scripts in your back pocket ready to go," and I didn't really have that. Partially because like I didn't think I deserved that yet. Like the idea of I'm going to go off and write a feature and direct it. Like that didn't seem. I was waiting for, I don't know, someone to give me permission to do that. And I didn't believe in myself enough to be like pursuing that. I had just sort of been like helping other people and co-writing things with people and trying to bolster other people that I thought were probably more like cut out for this industry than I was. So then when my manager said that, I went off and wrote my first like solo script. And it was way too dark and weird and messed up. And so we did not make that. And then I took a step back and thought about what else I might want to write. And that was when I had this like idea. I had, a little notebook of like 1-line ideas, and like Old Man with His Truffle Pig was one of those ideas. And that was when I dove into Pig. That was the second one that I wrote. And that just kind of snowballed into Pig. Like initially I wrote it as something that I could shoot guerrilla style for like $200,000 in Portland if I really wanted to. And that's sort of what I was planning on. Like, okay, these are all real locations. This is something I could just kind of scrounge together and make it happen. Just something that like I felt like I could pull off. And then more and more people got interested in it. And then Nick got interested in it, and it became bigger than that.
I imagine he's a game-changing element.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
he was a big element in that. But even with Pig, it wasn't like I wrote this and suddenly everyone was like, we have to make this movie. It was I wrote it. My manager sent it to maybe 10 production companies. One of them, like 9 of them, said, "Why is there no action in this? This is stupid and weird." And then one of them said, "Oh, this is kind of weird. Like, let's do it." And then from there, it was kind of, bringing on more and more people. We ended up with, I think, like 10 producers on the project. So it was definitely one of those, you kind of, this company takes it to another production company and a bigger financier. And gradually it kind of builds to the point where then Endeavor noticed it. And then
it's that snowball rolling down a hill that gathers more snow.
And then and then once Endeavor noticed it, they had just signed Nick. And WME had just signed Nick, and they suggested going out to him. And it was one of those, wow, like, do you think he'd be into this? And we went out to him, and then he was into it. And it was just one of those just kind of gradual, it took one little yes and then a lot of keeping the momentum going. Like, I remember I would go up to Portland, even when people involved in the project were saying, like, all we can do right now is like wait and see what the financiers say. And I would go up to Portland and scout restaurants and meet local crew members and do as much stuff as I could to kind of keep momentum going, so that the multiple times when it felt like the project was going to stall out, I had like a binder of locations and people to show people, like, no, but like this could be real. We could shoot here. And this person said we could shoot in their restaurant for free. And like there's all this stuff, and it made it harder to say no to, because I think a movie's natural state is to like fall apart. And so you have to just constantly be doing stuff to kind of keep it moving forward and keep it together.
Now, did you feel at this point that you were a filmmaker?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I think everyone always sort of feels like a fraud. I didn't know what being a filmmaker really meant. Like, I knew I liked to write. I knew I liked to edit. I was terrified of the idea of directing. I didn't think I was the kind of personality to direct. Like, I thought you had to be, I don't know, like loud and strong and all these things. And I tend to be like quieter and more reserved and not as social. And I just didn't see myself like leading a set. I didn't know if I could pull that off. But directing really became like how I wanted to unite my passion for writing and my passion for editing. And it seemed like that was a sort of necessary step to connect those two things. And it ended up working out really well. Like, I found out, you don't have to be loud or mean or whatever to be a director. Like, you can be soft-spoken, you can be, quieter and collaborative and all these things. And it can actually like help and create a real sense of camaraderie. And you don't have to be like, leading the ship in the more aggressive way that I thought you might have to. And that was a nice discovery.
Now, I want to save kind of what happens once you get started with Pig for our commentary track. So I'm going to jump ahead.
Okay.
Because whether or not you felt like a filmmaker going into it, you can't argue, on the way out that you definitely are. Even though if you're like me, you never feel that way. You can intellectually say, yes, I have made a film, therefore I am a filmmaker.
Yeah, I have a sense of sort of how to make a movie. I left it.
And you were paid, so you're a professional filmmaker.
Barely. I'm trying to think like when that transition happened. It happened at a weird time because we finished Pig during the pandemic. Then we sat on it for a year and then released it a year later. So it was weird because there was a chunk of time in there where Pig was done. I was happy with what I did, but the world had no idea about it. So I was still just like an unemployed guy writing scripts, hoping for another project, and no one had any reason to trust me. So timing wise, because of where the world was, the feeling like a filmmaker or being accepted in that way took a little while longer. Although I do remember being on set for Pig and feeling like, when I realized like, I myself, Michael, can make movies, and like I know what I'm doing. Like, I have a vision for this. All I need is to be able to like know what I want, know what I'm trying to express, and know how to talk to the people around me and help them express that with me. And like discovering that it's sort of just that simple, even though that can also be super, super complicated, was a wonderful discovery. And I felt like, I might actually be cut out for this, which was nice.
Now, you make quite a jump here career-wise, because I would say actually you've made a few of these, because coming off of a documentary short, editing and producing a documentary short into making the movie that you made, and then coming off of Pig, which is, I think, an incredible independent film, incredible, and going from that right into the belly of the studio franchise system.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't usually there's 3 or 4 movies in between a movie the size of Pig and the movie that you just made that came out this year, A Quiet Place Day One. Right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that jump, because I can't relate to that. That's such an incredible leap.
It was it was actually something I actively didn't want to do. I didn't want to do the whole second feature, get sucked into the studio system. I was like, I don't want to do a franchise. I don't want to do a big studio thing. I was thinking about, what's a nice little step up from Pig where I'll have some more resources, but is still sort of in the world of what I know. And then, I don't know, Quiet Place came along and it checked all the boxes of things I wanted to avoid: studio, franchise, movie. But it was almost in thinking about all the things I wanted to avoid about it that I came to kind of a character story that I couldn't shake and that I was interested in and felt interesting to me and interesting to if you could make that on a big studio franchise movie, wouldn't that be a fun challenge? And I remember I pitched it to Krasinski and to Paramount.
Who had approached you, right?
Yeah, Krasinski saw Pig and he really loved Pig, and he said, hey, will you bring some of that Pig touch to the Quiet Place universe? He was very open to, he wanted to kind of hand off this franchise and be like, hey, not every movie has to have the Krasinski stamp on it. Let's do something that feels tonally different. What would this look like for you? And yeah, I remember my pitch was 30 seconds long, and it was, hey guys, I don't think this is the most marketable version of the movie, but if I were to do this, I would do a movie about a dying hospice patient who, when the world is ending, decides to go get her favorite slice of pizza. And they were like, fuck yeah, let's do that. Wow. And so it did feel like, okay, what a unique opportunity to do something kind of different within a studio franchise situation. And it came with plenty of compromises and headaches and needing to scratch certain itches and all of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I still got to make that story, which was exciting for me. But yeah, it seemed like a terrible idea, but it was just weird and exciting. And also I think there was an element of not recklessness, but I don't think I wanted to prove something to myself, but I think I wanted to make sure that fear was not playing a role in my decisions. And maybe I overcompensated and overcorrected for that, where I was like, well, this seems terrifying. This seems more than I can handle. But because I feel that way, I want to do it even more, because I want to not prove to myself that I can do it, but I don't know, just stretch myself and stretch my limits as much as possible and go into a territory that I do feel kind of unequipped for or ill-equipped for. And I don't know, it just seems like that's where you grow. I mean, that's what it was for Pig. I had never been on a feature film set. I had never been on really a proper film set until I got on the set of Pig. And I learned so much and found my own ways to approach those things, because I hadn't been taught the ways you're supposed to do certain things. And so I was just like, well, let's just dive in with as big of a project as I could imagine. And it could have been a nightmare and turned out terribly, but I think I did get to learn a ton. And yeah, I mean, I do not regret doing that.
No, and it was a big hit critically. It was a big hit at the box office. I mean, it really, you did it. I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of people come out of those smaller independents and they get caught up in the gears of a big studio movie and it can destroy them.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen to you, which is amazing.
Yeah. Just got out by the skin of my teeth.
Sure. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, but yeah. And so having done Pig and then having done Quiet Place, what is next for you? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, next up is a movie called The Death of Robin Hood with Hugh Jackman and Jodie Comer. And that really was, I made a tiny movie with Pig, big movie with Quiet Place. learned a lot from both of them, have things that I loved from both of them, the freedom of a smaller movie, the resources of a larger movie. And I was like, I want to try and make something kind of right in the middle, where I can maintain more control over it, like do something a little weirder, but also kind of scratch some of those itches that a larger movie needs to scratch. And yeah, I wrote this script right before Quiet Place. I wrote it on spec. There was like a 2-month period from December to February 2022, when they were kind of getting their ducks in a row to hire me for Quiet Place. And I was like, okay, I want to have a script in my back pocket, so I can sort of be working on it in the background. Or maybe there's a part of me that was like, or for when inevitably Quiet Place falls apart and they realize, what have we done, that I'll have something that I kind of care about. And yeah, it was similar to Pig in that, initially with the idea for Pig, I was like, this seems like a crazy idea. Like, I'm going to write a movie about a guy looking for his truffle pig. But then I wrote it and I was like, I have to make this movie. Like, this feels like my soul. And Robin was the same thing, where it's like, really, I'm going to write a Robin Hood movie? That seems like career suicide. And then I wrote this version of it and I was just like, well, shit, I guess I have to make this movie because I really love this script. And yeah, so then I've just kind of been working on that a little bit in the background, trying to really like maintain as much control as possible, trying to surround myself with people that I really trust. And that's been a really nice experience so far. And then we're going off to shoot that beginning of next year.
Now, you and I have talked a little bit about the concept of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We talked about that at our first lunch. Do you still feel that kind of now going into your third film?
I think it's yes and no. I mean, it's changed. I like not entirely knowing what I'm doing. Like, I like a project that I'm not sure if I can pull off. Like I like feeling like I'm right at the edge of my capabilities, of my understanding. 'Cause then I feel like it's a constant discovery. I feel like that translates into the work. So like, I'm always going to want to not know if a project's going to work out. So yeah. So in the sense that like, I'm not like, yeah, I got this. I'm a director now and I'll make a cool movie and it'll do great. Like, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to pull it off, but I know the things that I need to do to get it to the place that I want it to be. And if it sucks or not, like, that's sort of not as much the point. So I guess like, yeah, I'm not sure I can pull it off, but that's not the point anymore. I'm not sure it'll be great or it'll be accepted or any of that stuff, but I know sort of the things that I have to do to make it happen. And so I don't feel like an imposter in that sense, where like I know the moving parts now. Whether or not it's going to be a hit, like is beyond my control or interest, kind of.
You and I grew up similarly feeling that a career as a filmmaker wasn't real.
Yeah.
Like, not even just, like you said, not even ambitious or difficult to
achieve. It's a make-believe.
Yeah, it's
career,
a dream.
Yeah.
And not in a, yeah, it's
not in like
literally
a goal,
a dream.
but in the, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel now that you're in the industry? What do you make of this thing that we do for a living?
I mean, it still is incredible that we get to do this thing. I mean, it's like day to day, you just understand what's required. I just feel insanely lucky that I get to be one of the people that gets to do this. I do think there's, it's just, there is an element of like, I think you can work really, really hard and just never get to have the sort of opportunities to make the kinds of movies that I've been lucky enough to make. And you can be just as talented and have all these great ideas. But there are a lot of gatekeepers in this industry. There's a lot of like, it's not designed to like welcome people in. And I, somehow managed to kind of like slip in, and it's been cool, and I'm so lucky. But yeah, I still kind of have no idea how I did it. Like, I just did it by I did it by trying to focus on things that I was passionate about, and I did it by
making stuff.
Yeah, making stuff that I cared about and learning about what I cared about. Like, I made a lot of stuff in my early 20s that I didn't care about, and looking back, I was like, those don't even feel like my things. They just feel like they were, looking back, they were an exercise. That was where I learned the technical things, but it was also where I learned how to identify when something felt like it was really coming from me or when it was coming from what I thought other people might want. And that's been like a really valuable thing. I think as I've gotten older, I have a better sort of like barometer for when something really sparks my interest on like a deeper soul level, rather than like oh, that's a nifty idea, or oh, that would sell, or like people would really enjoy that. And I've learned to like kind of actively avoid that stuff and really focus on the stuff that like feels cool on like a deep level to me, and not just snazzy or something.
Yeah.
But that took me like took me most of my 20s to kind of get to that point where I was confident enough in my taste. And it wasn't even confidence. It was kind of just like throwing it away and being like, all I have to offer is what I care about. So I just am going to have to pour everything into that and find the meaning in that as best I can.
Have you found yourself in the position now where you're asked by younger filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers for advice? What do you say to them now?
I usually say, go make a feature if you can. Like make
Wow,
make
yeah.
a really inexpensive feature. I mean, kind of what I was initially aiming for with Pig, which is, and like even that would have been ambitious for talking to like a high school or something, but like I think it's really useful to make a feature. I think shorts are a good way to sort of learn some of the technical stuff, but like I think writing the process of having to write a feature, having to shoot a feature, and then having it out there and like having an object that you can like share with the world that will be taken really seriously is like extremely valuable. I wish in high school I had shot a feature, because looking back, like I could have gotten my friends together and shot a terrible feature film, and I would have learned so much more about what I cared about. But I think I was like afraid to do that thing, and it seemed insurmountable. And so instead it was like, okay, let's make like tiny little shorts, and let's make shadows of the thing that we want to be doing, but not the thing itself. But like make the thing itself, and don't be afraid if it sucks. Like that's where you're going to learn. And also I think having a feature as like a commodity is really useful as a way to be like, hey, like, I made a feature film everyone in Hollywood's made a short film and no one cares. But like if you say, hey, I made a $10,000 feature with my friends in a room, like that's something, and you learned a lot, and people will take you seriously.
And if you can somehow find a way to make that commercially viable in any way, even for a small straight to streaming or just get it out into the world, like suddenly then kaboom.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that would be amazing. That's almost
I know,
putting too much pressure. I'm just
way
like,
too
make a
much, but-
terrible feature film, make like the worst feature film imaginable, and then don't show it to anyone maybe, and then make another one.
I did that. I made a film as an undergrad, feature film, mini DV that is unwatchable.
Yeah.
And I've spent.
Are we pulling it up right now?
No,
Is that
God,
good?
no. I think I've destroyed. I have a copy of it.
Yeah.
But I think I've eliminated it from.
You've blinded
public
anyone that
spheres.
has seen it, so they can't. Yeah.
And some of my longest term collaborators have never seen it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. Like,
I wish I could hide more of my, like, it's, I feel like it's unfortunate that nowadays a lot of filmmakers just, anything that you've done is up on YouTube or something like that. And like the dignity of when films could just be like early student films could be lost. I miss that.
Yeah. Well, and they are such training grounds.
Yeah.
They're not all meant for public consumption.
Yeah.
And in the same way that you don't want to share your essays and test papers with people, they're formative. But that's very good advice.
But I think making something, and if you can make a feature, make a feature. Yeah.
The thing I can't get over is like, and it sound like such a Grandpa Simpson moment here, but it's like we're all carrying around cameras in our pockets that are better than the cameras I made that feature film on.
Yeah.
By a lot. And that blows my mind because, it used to be access to the cameras, access to the editorial software, was a barrier. And that isn't the case anymore. You can get the software, you can shoot it on your phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, the technology is definitely there. But like, and I don't even, I mean, I think a lot of young filmmakers are really sort of technology obsessed in some ways. And like, I think it's like, don't worry. I mean, it's easy to say, but like, don't worry too much about that. Like, try and get decent sound if you can. Take your other friend's phone and put a little like $20 lavalier mic in it and have that recording audio in someone's pocket, and then film the rest on your phone, and you're going to have better sound and video than like anything that we had growing up.
Yeah.
And you'll learn a lot.
So let's talk a little about Pig. Pig is a 2021 drama written and directed by yourself, from a story by yourself and Vanessa Block. It stars Nicolas Cage, Alex Wolff, and Adam Arkin. The film was incredibly well received, distributed by Neon, and holds a 97% fresh rating. Not that these things, matter the most, but on the other hand, 97%.
There was a part of me that was like, oh God, what if it's dropped since I last checked it? It's like, this
It would take a
awkward
lot
time
because that's 97% of 268 critic reviews.
Some critics listening to this now and being like, I never put my review in. Like this.
There's always somebody, right? Like who comes running in to kind of like fart in the elevator.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts, especially with movies in the high 90s. You see people
no
just
one wants
taking shots
to see that.
But this was an incredibly well-received film upon its release. I vividly remember seeing it for the first time at home, and I made assumptions about the movie that turned out to be wildly inaccurate, where I thought I was in line to see an action film. And I have no idea why I even thought that, because there's nothing about the trailer that kind of indicates that.
I understand that assumption. I mean, I think the movie itself plays with that assumption enough that it kind of coaxes you into understanding what it is by the end. But I don't blame you for making that assumption.
Now, normally I ask people, how did this movie come into your life? But this movie was born of you. So I guess my question for you is, to what degree does the kind of underground culinary scene in Portland connect with you? Like, to what degree is any of that kind of part of your life?
I mean, every weekend I do underground fights up in Portland.
Fantastic.
And, it's how I stay fit. I had never been to Portland until after I wrote the first draft of this script. And then I went up to Portland and started looking at real places more and sort of integrating them into the story even more. A lot of that stuff came from kind of an organic unfolding of the story. Like, it was finding this character, questioning what his backstory is, where he would have come from, why he would be here. And then once I decided to place it in Portland, it was researching the culinary world of Portland, the history of Portland. And I don't know, it's just one of those, like, you take in as much information as you can and you try and like take a step back and kind of let your subconscious and your brain start making like interesting connections and finding, I guess what you would say, like thematic connections. And I just think of it as like, I don't know, sometimes just two things that you learn just sort of rhyme and you want to find a way to kind of integrate those into a story and it just makes sense. I really like to be pretty loose with how I write and like let all the research and all these things just kind of come into it, and then I start shaping it after I sort of have everything kind of on the canvas. A lot of that just came from like researching the history of Portland and how it used to be, at the turn of the century, it was like one of the most dangerous port cities in the country in 1900. And with that, by the 50s, it was a hotspot for organized crime. And those two things combined with there being these like underground tunnels there that they called the Shanghai tunnels, which the lore of that was, that's where people would get, like sailors would come to town and get drunk and get knocked out, and then they'd wake up on a boat to Shanghai after they were dragged through these tunnels that led to the docks. So like there's all this kind of lore around Portland and the kind of seedy underbelly of it. And I don't know, there were ways that it all kind of made sense together.
Well, let's get into the movie. Okay. And I'm sure there's going to be an enormous amount of anecdotes that we can get into as we go. I'm very excited to watch Pig with you. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here on Act 1. And for those of you listening at home, please join us for Act 2, where we're going to watch Pig with Michael Sarnoski. We'll meet you over there on that episode in just a few minutes. And thank you in the meantime for listening. For SpectreVision Radio, I'm Mike Flanagan, and this is Director's Commentary.
Stay tuned for Act 2 of Director's Commentary. Director's Commentary is a SpectreVision Radio production recorded at Spotify Studios in downtown Los Angeles, California. Hosted by Mike Flanagan. Executive producers Mike Flanagan, Daniel Noah, and Jim Perry. Producers Lawrence Ingley, Stephen Demler, Mike Risley, and Elijah Wood. Associate producer, Alexandra Magistro. On-set producer, Christina Campagnola. Music by Morgan Whirlage. Edited and mixed by Graham Resnick. Art by Telepath. Director's Commentary is a production of SpectreVision Radio.